Hello and welcome everybody to another episode of Books and Bytes. Today we're doing a deep dive into something a little different. Not a traditional book exactly, but a curated collection of really important blog posts from, well, a legendary Silicon Valley figure, Marc Andreessen. We're talking about the Pmarca Blog Archives, which gives you this raw, unfiltered look into the mind of an entrepreneur and investor, an industry observer from back in 2007, 2009. It's just this stack of insights that honestly feels as relevant today as it did when he first wrote them.
Absolutely. And what's so powerful about these archives, I think, is how Andreessen just distills years of his experience. I mean, co-founding Netscape, Opsware, advising tons of other companies, he boils it down into these core principles, often pretty brutal principles, actually. Across these posts, we'll unpack, several main themes. The realities and the true drivers of startup success, practical advice on things like fundraising and hiring.
Crucial stuff.
Totally. And also how to navigate the, let's say, complex world of big corporations, plus strategies for personal development, career advancement for, high achievers. And there's this fascinating look into the psychology behind entrepreneurial judgment and, maybe surprisingly, the role of luck.
Wow, that's quite a landscape we're covering. So our mission for you, the listener, is to really pull out that timeless wisdom, whether you're maybe building a company yourself or just churning your career, or even if you're just curious about how impactful ideas actually take root and grow in this, super dynamic world.
Yeah.
There's definitely something here for you. Okay, let's unpack this wealth of knowledge that Marc Andreessen shared with us and see what truly stands out. So first off, Andreessen doesn't pull any punches when he asks, why not do a startup?
Right.
His core insight here is that it's just this all-consuming emotional and, practical gauntlet. You're not just building a business, you basically become the entire infrastructure, from the visionary down to the person emptying the wastebaskets, and you have to be ready for constant emotional whiplash, just hearing no all the time.
Yeah, it's a really vivid picture of relentless uncertainty, brutal hours, and these completely unpredictable X factors. I mean, he actually mentions things like Russian mobsters laundering money through a company or a stealth competitor just appearing and dominating overnight.
Right.
Sounds wild, but
It really paints a picture.
it does. And you hit the crucial point. Andreessen emphasizes that in a normal company, things sort of happen. There's a structure. But in a startup, that infrastructure, it's just not there. You are the infrastructure. And that context is absolutely fundamental for everything else he advises. It highlights that the founder's resilience, their sheer will, is the absolute bedrock before anything else.
Okay, so let's say you've braced yourself for that startup roller coaster. The next big hurdle is often getting the fuel, right? The funding. And Andreessen's just as insightful about navigating the inevitable no from VCs. He points out VCs rarely give you a hard no. It's usually more of a maybe or maybe not right now.
Right, a soft no.
Exactly. And his advice is accept it gracefully, definitely ask for feedback, and then actively, retool your plan, address the risks they brought up. And here's a great counterintuitive bit. He says, never ever say that you have no competitors.
That's a classic mistake.
Yeah, he says it just signals naivete.
Well, the real power in that approach, I think, is how Andreessen frames risk. It's not just this scary thing. It's something you can actually manage. He encourages founders to basically put themselves in the VC shoes, actively minimize enough of those risks, founder risk, market risk, competition, timing, to make the company actually fundable. And this often means, as he puts it, kicking the ball further down the road, build more product, get more customers first.
Maybe through angel money or bootstrapping.
Exactly. Bootstrapping, consulting on the side, whatever it takes before you go for the big VC money.
But what if you don't even know any VCs to get that no or maybe from? That's a common problem. Andreessen hits this head on. He explains that VCs, they work almost entirely through referrals. Just sending a business plan cold. It's like sending a screenplay over the transom in Hollywood.
Yeah, good luck with that.
Pretty much. It's just unsolicited, unlikely to even get looked at. So step one is have your stuff together. A polished plan, presentation, all the supporting materials, and the absolute best thing you can walk in with. A working product, or at least a prototype that has some actual traction. Real customers, real users.
That's key. Traction speaks volumes.
Beyond that, you need to qualify VCs. Make sure they invest in your sector, and then network. He even suggests leveraging things like startup accelerators, Y Combinator's the famous example, known for their intense programs and, crucially, their strong VC connections. Or even just engaging with VC blogs to get on their radar.
This just underlines that whole idea of making a great first impression, right?
Wow.
And having something tangible to show. Andreessen keeps reinforcing that your product and your traction are your most valuable assets. They build credibility, they show you can execute, even before you ask for the check.
Right. And all of this really leads up to what Andreessen boldly declares is the only thing that matters.
Yeah.
This is where he introduces what he calls Rachleff's law of startup success. And it's pretty controversial. He says the market is paramount, more important than the team, more important than the product.
That's the big one. His famous line is, when a great team meets a lousy market, market wins. When a lousy team meets a great market, market wins.
It's stark. He vividly describes the feeling of achieving product market fit, or PMF. Customers are buying as fast as you can make it, reporters are calling, money's piling up, versus that painful slog before product market fit. Slow growth, long sales cycles, reviews are just kind of blah.
Now, he's clear this isn't an excuse for having a bad team or a lousy product, but it's a critical lens for strategy. Andreessen says, look, success often follows, despite other screw-ups if you nail PMF, and failure almost always stems from a lack of it. It's about understanding the fundamental physics of startup success. You have to obsessively focus on achieving product market fit above almost everything else, because without a market, well, even genius struggles.
Okay, building right on that, Andreessen then asks, how much funding is too little? Too much. This is another big one. He divides a startup's life into two phases, before PMF and after PMF. Before PMF, you need just enough money to reach product market fit. That's the goal. After PMF, you need enough to fully exploit that opportunity and get the company to profitability.
And crucially, in both cases, he stresses having insurance money for surprises, because surprises always happen.
Always. He details the dangers of too little funding. You hit unforeseen setbacks. Maybe funding windows suddenly close. We saw that happen. But also, too much money can be toxic. It leads to what he calls cultural corrosion, complacency, maybe lazy management, hiring bloat, a total lack of focus.
Which raises that important question. How do you keep that scrappy, hungry culture when you're suddenly flush with cash? Andreessen's advice is pretty clear. Run lean. Bank as much of that money as possible. And relentlessly, constantly communicate that raising money itself, that's not an accomplishment.
Right, it's just fuel.
Exactly. He suggests staying scrappy on the material stuff like fancy offices, but maybe splurging on things that actually boost productivity, like great chairs and monitors. It's really about acting like you haven't raised nearly as much as you actually have, both in mindset and in spending habits.
And here's another one of those insights that really sticks with you. He says, a startup's initial business plan doesn't matter that much.
Yeah, that seems counterintuitive at first.
It does. But his reasoning is simple.
Yeah.
You just can't predict the future. He uses the great anecdote about Thomas Edison, right? Accidentally inventing the phonograph while trying to build a speaking telegraph. Sometimes the real opportunity just reveals itself in unexpected ways, but only if you stay open and adaptable.
So, being adaptable, aggressively seeking that product market fit, that's far more important than having some super detailed plan up front that's probably wrong anyway, like the military saying, no battle plan survives contact with the enemy.
Okay, let's move on to building and managing people. Andreessen shares the Pmarca Guide to Hiring. He emphasizes the absolute critical importance of having a top-notch executive team. And his criteria for startup executives are really specific. They must be able to build from scratch. They need to be a primary individual contributor, meaning they roll up their sleeves and do the work themselves.
Not just manage others.
Exactly. And they have to be a team player. He also advises against hiring executives too early, especially before you've found product market fit. And he really encourages promoting from within whenever you possibly can.
Yeah, and when it comes to hiring externally, he digs into key qualities. You look for hunger and drive. He cautions against people who've maybe done it before too many times, perhaps lost their edge. He says, embrace a healthy ego, but be wary. And he's particularly skeptical of executives coming straight from huge, successful companies. That famous line, never hire anyone straight out of IBM first, let them go somewhere else and fail, and then hire them.
Ouch. But it makes a point about needing scrappiness.
It does. And the ultimate metric he keeps coming back to is a pattern of output. What have they actually done? This applies to managing and firing too. You know, Andy Grove's wisdom, you always fire a bad executive too late, but when you do it, it has to be crisp and decisive.
That never hire from IBM line is pretty stark, though. I wonder, in today's world where big tech companies are often hubs of innovation, is that advice still fully applicable? Or does it need a bit more nuance? It makes me think of Ben Horowitz's counterpoint on micromanagement. We usually think of it as bad, right? Yeah. But Horowitz argues that sometimes, applied strategically, like with a new exec needing context or someone with a specific weakness, it can actually be a really effective tool for acceleration, for improvement. He calls it like fine wine.
That's a really excellent point about nuance. Andreessen's IBM advice, I think, targets a specific kind of big company thinking, maybe a lack of that essential startup scrappiness. But Horowitz correctly points out that even super experienced people might need an intense download of a new company's specific context, its culture, its challenges. So it's about being precise with your leadership style, knowing when to dive deep and when to step back and empower. Taken together, these insights paint a picture of, well, a human-centric approach to building a company, but one that's grounded in intense pragmatism. You're looking for drive, passion for the work, and absolute integrity above everything else.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit. How do startups navigate the wider world, especially when dealing with giant corporations? Andreessen introduces what he calls the Moby Dick theory of big companies, which is just a great name.
It is.
He basically says big companies are largely inexplicable, complex, unpredictable, like the great white whale itself. He even uses quotes from Moby Dick to illustrate how overwhelming they can be, how opaque their decision-making often is. As a startup, you're kind of like Captain Ahab, and you have absolutely no idea what Moby Dick is going to do next or why.
Right, so that raises the really important question. How do you stay focused on your own mission when you're dealing with this, unpredictable Leviathan? His practical advice for startups is really clear. Don't rely on big company deals for your survival. Never. Never assume a deal is actually closed until the ink is totally dry. Be incredibly patient. Watch out for bad deals that might distract you.
Or sink you.
Yeah. And never, ever assume they'll do the obvious thing, because they probably won't. And his final point. If deals with big companies are actually central to your strategy, then hire a seasoned pro, someone who's navigated those waters before. It's about being prepared, cautious, and definitely not getting obsessed like Ahab.
The archives also briefly touch on turnaround, situations for large, struggling companies, and also on retaining great people. For a turnaround, Andreessen suggests some pretty brutal but maybe necessary steps. Go dark and execute, basically shut out the noise. Throw your predecessor completely under the bus.
Controversial, but maybe pragmatic in that context.
Right. Double down on what's actually working, kill the failing projects ruthlessly, lay off maybe a third of the workforce, promote the up-and-comers who get it, and recruit aggressively. He also notes, interestingly, that retention problems are usually winning problems. If the company is winning, most people want to stay.
That makes sense.
And he offers this counterintuitive advice for retaining great people who might be tempted by a startup. Actively try to talk them out of it. Offer them challenging new roles, real career development, and give them a realistic picture of startup economics versus their current stability. You might actually be doing them a favor.
Yeah, that advice really transcends specific industries, I think. Then Andreessen transitions to the Pmarca Guide to Career Productivity and some other things. And he kicks it off with this provocative line. First rule of career planning, do not plan your career.
Okay, tell me more.
Well, he argues the world just changes too fast. It's too complex for rigid long-term plans. Instead, you should focus on cultivating opportunities, both the ones that just appear and the ones you actively create for yourself, and view your career more like a portfolio of jobs roles opportunities, each with different risk-return profiles.
Like an investor managing assets.
Exactly. And he really underscores the importance of skills and education, advocating for technical degrees, becoming a double threat by combining skills like engineering plus an MBA, or adding communication management, sales, finance, international experience, whatever gives you an edge.
He also talks about where to go and why. His advice is pretty direct. Get to the center of your chosen industry, especially if it's rapidly changing, as fast as you possibly can. He uses Silicon Valley for tech, LA for entertainment as examples. He actually says living anywhere other than the center of your industry is a mistake. Strong words.
Very strong.
And he recommends getting experience in younger, high-growth companies. That's where you can rapidly acquire skills and get promotions faster, he argues, rather than starting out in a big, slow-moving company or a super raw, unproven startup. Every job, he says, is both a tactical and a strategic opportunity to learn how a business works, how an industry functions.
What's really fascinating there is the emphasis on continuous learning, adaptability, not a rigid path. He encourages you to constantly think critically. How would I start a company like this today? How would I do it differently? What are the underlying assumptions here? It's this really active engagement with your environment designed to equip you to improve things, maybe even disrupt things, not just be a cog in the machine.
Okay, then we get to the Pmarca Guide to Personal Productivity, which is just packed with these really actionable tips. He controversially suggests not keeping a rigid schedule, if you can possibly avoid it, to maximize that uninterrupted flow time.
Which sounds amazing, but hard for most people.
Totally. Instead, he uses 3 simple lists: Todo, watch, for things to keep an eye on, and later, for non-urgent stuff. He recommends the classic 3x5 card for your daily tasks. Just a physical card, jot down your 3 to 5 most critical tasks for the day. Simple. And maybe my favorite, the anti-Todo list. At the end of the day, you write down what you actually accomplished, gives you that little endorphin hit, that sense of progress.
I like that one too. Other tips include checking email just twice a day. Good luck again, screening your calls. The hide in an iPod hack to signal you're busy, starting the day with a real breakfast, not just coffee. And only agreeing to new commitments when both your head and your heart say yes, not just one or the other.
Yeah, the underlying philosophy seems to be about consciously structuring your environment, maximizing flow, focusing on what you truly love and what really matters. It feels like a pragmatic, almost defensive strategy against all the noise and demands of a high-paced life, really, protecting your time and attention.
Definitely. It's about focus.
Okay, next, Andreessen dives into psychology and entrepreneurship, and he draws really heavily from Charlie Munger's amazing work on the psychology of human misjudgment. He highlights how our own, ingrained psychological tendencies can either help or seriously sabotage a startup. Let's maybe focus on 2 that seem super critical for founders. First, the reward and punishment super response tendency.
Yes, incentives.
Exactly. It highlights the immense power of incentives. Andreessen points out how they can actually drive immoral behavior if not designed carefully. And the need for counter goals.
Yeah.
For example, don't just measure recruiters on the number of hires, measure the quality of those hires after 6 months. He also contrasts stock options, which he sees as incenting value creation, with restricted stock, which he argues often just incents value preservation.
Right. And the second big one you mentioned, the doubt avoidance tendency. This one's tricky. It can be a massive strength for entrepreneurs, that persistence, that refusal to give up. But it flips into a major weakness if it becomes just pig-headed stubbornness that blinds you to clear signs your strategy is failing. Understanding these psychological traps, these biases, is really the first step toward making more rational, more effective decisions, both in leadership and strategy. It's about consciously building systems and habits to counteract our natural inclinations, especially in that high-stakes startup world.
The archives also touch on age in the entrepreneur, which is always an interesting topic. He references research by Dean Simonton on creativity. And the key takeaway isn't that you get less creative as you age, necessarily. While productivity peaks might vary by field, like maybe early 30s for math, late 40s or 50s for writing novels, the quality of your output doesn't necessarily decline. The secret to sustained creative success, Andreessen suggests, borrowing from Simonton, is maximizing quantity, taking more swings at the bat.
It's a numbers game, essentially. More attempts lead to more potential breakthroughs. And that research also highlights something else interesting. Intelligence, beyond a certain point, maybe around IQ 120, becomes less relevant than sheer persistence and just raw output for creative success. It really underscores that consistent effort, that bias towards action, often outweighs raw intellectual horsepower in the long run.
Then there's this great piece on luck in the entrepreneur, drawing from Dr. James Austin's 4 kinds of luck he describes. Chance 1, which is just pure blind luck, stuff happens. Chance 2 is luck that comes from motion, from activity, from stirring the pot energetically. You create more opportunities for luck to strike. Chance 3 is the prepared mind kind of luck. Think Pasteur or Fleming discovering penicillin. A uniquely equipped person sees a faint clue and understands its massive significance.
Right, serendipity plus expertise.
Exactly. And chance 4 is luck that comes from highly individualized action and behavior. It's almost like you will luck into existence through your unique approach. Like Disraeli's quote, "We make our fortunes and we call them fate."
And Andreessen distills a kind of roadmap from this for getting luck on your side, basically. Be energetic, be persistently curious, stay flexible enough to synthesize different ideas, and crucially, develop a unique personal point of view, a unique way of acting in the world. It's really about actively creating the conditions for luck to find you, not just passively waiting around for it.
And finally, his economic observations, particularly on bubbles on the brain, feel incredibly relevant even today. Back in 2007, He argued pretty strongly against the idea there was a new tech bubble forming. He pointed out that historically, real bubbles are rare, and the internet business had fundamentally changed since the dot-com bust. It was way cheaper to start companies, the market was vastly larger, business models were actually solid, generating real revenue.
He was pushing back against the constant doomsaying.
Totally. And then in 2009, he followed up with this brilliant satirical piece called, "Okay, you're right, it is a bubble." It just humorously mocked the persistent, often totally unfounded claims of a bubble, especially when you look at the massive innovation and growth that was actually happening. It's that classic Andreessen contrarian stance, sharp and witty. So wrapping this all up, what does this mean for you, our listener, whether you're building a company, navigating your career, or maybe just trying to make sense of this world full of information and opportunity? Andreessen really gives us this wealth of practical, sometimes really counterintuitive wisdom from his really blog archives. It's quite a download.
It really is. And the core message I personally take away from Andreessen's archives isn't just about entrepreneurship specifically. It's more about a mindset. It's a bias towards action, right? An obsession with finding that product market fit, whatever your product is. A relentless pursuit of learning. And maybe most importantly, a profound skepticism towards conventional wisdom. Don't just accept the status quo. His work really challenges us to ask, are we truly in control of our own destiny? Or are we just kind of reacting to circumstances? It encourages us to actively try and shape our paths and definitely question the assumptions that might be limiting us.
That's a great way to put it. Perhaps the real deep dive, then, is into ourselves, applying these principles, these ways of thinking, to our own ambitions, our own challenges. Until next time, keep digging, keep questioning, and keep making those surprising connections.